Alright, so in this video I'm going to take you through the prerequisite skills questions. I'm going to show you the work that you should show with them and how to do them. Now, if you don't want to listen through the whole explanation, if you just kind of go to the end, you can get the answers and make sure you got the answers and the correction and the correct methodology. So we're starting off with order of operations. And I would like you to write them out in a specific way. So question number 1. Remember, it's bed mass. So the first operation I'm going to do is my brackets. I write out everything else that I don't use. And 84 minus 37, I can use my calculator to do that. 47. So I've done my brackets, now it's to my exponents. 5 squared is 25 times 3 minus 47. Now I do my multiplications. 125 minus 47. And my final answer is 125 minus 47, 78. That is how you should do these questions. I should see all the steps. Now in some questions you can do operations in parallel. For instance, I can do this question and this question in one step because they don't have anything to do with each other. So this is going to become negative 3 cubed divided by, in the brackets, 6 plus 3. Now again, I can do two operations as long as they don't interfere with each other. Negative 3 cubed is negative 27 divided by 9. And my last step is to do negative 3. There's my answer. This is how I expect you to do math work. All right, in this one, I'm going to do that question, which is division. So 36 divided by 9, I get 4 squared times 2 minus 15 divided by negative 3. I can do this 4 squared. 16 times 2. Now I can actually do this question right here because it doesn't relate to the other question. So I can do 2 at once because they're not going to relate to it. Now negative 15, I can treat that as negative 15 divided by negative 3 is equal to plus 5. It's equal to 32 plus 5 is equal to 37. There's my answer. Show all your work, show all your steps, line up your equal signs. Next one, again, there are some questions that I can do independently. I can do this and this at the same time because they're not going to touch each other. They're not going to connect to each other, so I'm going to use a different color again. So negative 4 cubed is equal to negative 64 plus negative 6 squared divided by 12 plus 20. Now I have to do this first. Negative 64 plus 36 divided by 12 plus 20. Now I have to do this. Plus 3 plus 20. Now I do this. Negative 61 plus 20. And lastly, I'm going to do those two and I'm going to get negative 41. That's my answer. Show all your work. Show every step. Keep track of every number. All right, area. Formula work. Write out the formula. Say it in your head. Fill in what you know. Solve it. So find the area for the following figures below. So area of a rectangle is equal to length times height. I say that in my head as I write it down to remember it. Area is equal to 10.5 inches times 4.5 inches. So long as the units are the same, you do not need to write them down. So I wrote out my formula, said it in my head, filled it in. Now solve it. 10.5 times 4.5, 47.25. And it's square inches right there, right? Write the formula down. Fill in what you know. Solve it. Make sure you have the correct units. Do that every time. Next one, I have a parallelogram. So area is equal to base times height. This is my base right here. This is my height. I use the perpendicular height for this area. 12 centimeters times 18 centimeters. 12 times 18 is equal to 216 centimeters squared. Right, so write down the formula. Say it in your head. Fill in what you know. Solve it. Don't forget to write units. If you have different units in the question, like let's say you had centimeters and meters, like let's say this was centimeters and this was meters, convert before you do formula work. Next section. Keep going. It's a circle. I want to figure out the area. Area of a circle. Area is equal to pi times radius squared. Write out the formula. Fill in what I know. Do my steps. Now, circles, sometimes I like to do an extra step. I do 3.5 squared is equal to 12.25 times pi. I like to write it like this. And now I do 12.25 times pi, 38.5 square yards. Again, write out your formula. Fill in what you know. Solve it. Make sure you have the correct units. All right. Last one. For a triangle, area of a triangle is equal to base times height divided by 2. I wrote out my formula. I said it in my head. Area is equal to 5 times 2.9 divided by 2. Right, that's my base. That's my perpendicular height. These other units are not necessary for the area. If I had to find the perimeter, they would be. Now I'm going to do 5 times 2.9, 14.5. divided by 2. And if I need to keep going, I keep going up there to the right. Divide this by 2. 7.25 square feet. Right, so there are the answers. That is how your work should look. If your work doesn't look like this, you need to do it so your work looks like this. All right, so there's the area of those figures. Determine the value of the expression for the given value of the variable. So we've got 4 pi r squared, and r is equal to 3.4. So we're going to write out 4 pi r squared, and then that becomes 4 pi 3.4 squared. It's 4 times pi times 3.4 squared. I'm going to times that by 3.4 squared times 4. So it's equal to 46.24 times pi. $145.3. And we don't know the units on that. There are no units. It's just, can you solve this? Okay, so I wrote it out. I wrote out what was given. Then I filled in what I needed to do. Then I followed bed mass down here. Now, I do a little bit of a difference when it's all multiplying 3 terms like this. I multiply the numbers together and I leave the pi for later. I like pie for dessert, so I eat the pie last. All right, so the next one, we have another formula. It's 1/3 times pi times the radius squared times the height. Now we fill in what we know. So we could do 1/3 times pi times 5.2 squared times 8. Now, I'm doing this in a few steps, so I'm going to do 5.2 squared. I'm going to rewrite it out. 1/3 times pi times 27.04 times 8. Now I'm going to times it by 8. And I'm going to get 1/3 pi times 216.32. Now I'm going to deal with these two together. So I can do 1/3 times 216.32, which is the same thing as saying 216.32 divided by 3. So I get 71.106, repeating 6 times pi. I times that by pi. I always save pi for last. 226.5. Now for this one, you could have done a few more steps on your calculator without showing all your work. I would not mind that. Like if you did 8 times 27.04 times pi divided by 3 and just had the answer there, that would be just fine. All right, next one. We got pi times r times s plus pi times r squared. R is this, s is this. All right, now I'm going to show you why I save the pi's for last. So pi rs plus pi r squared. I write it out. I'm going to fill in what I know. Pi times 3 times 4.3 plus pi times 3 squared. So I'm going to multiply these two together, and I'm going to do this square on its own. So 3 times 4.3 is equal to 12.9 pi. Plus 3 squared is 9. 9 pi. So we've got 12.9 times pi plus 9 times pi. Now, I could do 12.9 times pi, get a decimal number. It's really long. And then do 9 times pi, get a decimal number that's really long, and then add them together. That works just fine. But I can also do 12.9 pi's plus 9 pi's, gives me 21. So 12.9 plus 9 gives me 21.9 pi. I can combine these together to get 21.9 pi. And then I just times that one by pi. 68.8. So I did this a little bit different than you need to do it. You can do it the way that I just showed you. Or you can multiply this out, get a decimal number, multiply this out, get a decimal number, and add them together. The reason I do it the way I do it is because I don't like writing down long decimal numbers. So by doing it this way, I can avoid having long decimal numbers in the middle of a question. So next one. So I write out what I'm doing. 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. And then I fill in what I know. 2 times pi times 6.7 squared plus 2 times pi times 6.7 times 12.3. Now, I'm going to do a similar thing. So I'm going to do this all in one step. I'm going to do 2 times 6.7 squared. I'm not going to write down the answer. 6.7 squared is 44.89. Times it by 2, 89.78. So you get 89.78 pi. This is the way I always do it. You could just do this whole question, get an even bigger decimal number here, but I did my 6.7 squared, then I times it by 2, and I got 89.7 times pi. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to do the 6.7 times the 12.3 times the 2. I'm going to write down by pi. So 6.7 times 12.3 times 2 is equal to 164.82 times pi. Now I can add these numbers together. I can just add this 89.78 and 164.82. So plus 89.78, 254.6 times pi. And then I just times it by pi. 799.8. Now, you could have multiplied this out into a decimal number and multiplied this out into a decimal number, then added those two decimal numbers together. You should get the same answer. I prefer doing it this way just because I think I get a more precise answer. All right, so you should be able to do these types of questions, these long questions, without much difficulty. But follow the same step. Write out what you're doing, fill in the blanks, and if you have a two-line calculator, you can probably just type this straight into your two-line calculator and it'll spit out this answer. So if you have a two-line calculator, you should be able to just type this straight in and get the right answer. But you still write it out, fill it in, show me what you're doing, write out your answer. All right, now we're doing conversions. All right, so 4.56 kilometers into meters. Well, if I'm going to show you the long way, I would do it this way. How many meters are there in 4.56 kilometers? If there are 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. You should just recognize it's 4.56 times 1,000, so we get 4,560 meters. Just like Pre-Cal 20, or Physical Science 20, WAMA10. Right, so I'm going to do them all this way. So I'm trying to figure out my inches. I know my yards, so how many inches are in 56.64 yards if there are 36 inches in 1 yard? I just do this times this divided by 1, and the divide by 1 doesn't really do anything, so I don't need to worry about that. 56.64 times 36, 2,039.04. Inches. Make sure you always have the right units in the end. Feet to centimeters. Same process. How many centimeters are there in 27.2 feet if there are about 30.48 centimeters in 1 foot? Right, and I'm always checking. Feet are on the bottom, centimeters are on the top. So 27.2 times 30.48, 829.056. Write down my answer. Miles to kilometers, same process. How many kilometers are there in 89.2 miles? If there's 1.609344 kilometers in 1 mile. Again, that times that divided by that. And we are going to get 89.2 times 1.609344, 143.55. There you go. Those are all the prerequisite skills. You should understand them all, how to do them. And you should have got, your work should look really nice and neat and be well organized. All right, that's all for the prerequisite skills. If all you want to do is check your answers, I'm just going to leave each section up for a little bit right now at the end of the video so you can check your answers.